Jim Hazard, and an introduction to CommonAccord, particularly as applied to the startup VC technology transfer office ecosystem. CommonAccord is an effort to open source legal documents in the same way that software is open sourced. Let's show a little bit of what that looks like. So on GitHub, people put open source software. You can also put text up as in open source, that is to say in a source format, and open, that is free to be used. So here we've put the National Venture Capital Association documents up in open source format. So we'll explain a little more what that looks like. But basically what we've done is, using a little bit of HTML, we break down each of the documents into its components so that they can then be manipulated as components. And this gets around, this is the core idea of how software is able to have what they call rough consensus and running code. That is, to do incremental iterative standards use and creation. Let's look at what that might look like. So as applied to venture capital. So this is an extremely complex set of documents. It is the National Venture Capital Association 2020 set of documents. Some of those have been updated. And these reflect those updates, but they're still called 2020. And what we've done is we've put them into a binder for an example of a hypothetical Acme Series A transaction. So note that this is a very complex set of documents. Including term sheet, the certificate of incorporation, indemnification, investor access, and all of that. I'm going to switch over to a local, this is a public instance, I'm going to switch over to a local instance of the same thing. So what Git allows you to do is to have more or less mirrors with whatever warps and bends and modifications individuals want to have, mirror copies of things in as many places as you want to have them. It's a truly distributed editing system. So this is pretty much the same thing with a few tweaks, and this is my local version of it. So term sheet, certificate of incorporation, indemnification agreement, the investor's rights agreement, all of these names are simply whatever your preference is. There is no magic about them. The little period at the end means that this is a prefix, and that has some nice attributes. Voting, confidential disclosure agreement, etc., all of these. So I've got the set of agreements, and I've also got some hypothetical investors. So State Street is said to be our number one investor, 2, 3. Information about the company. And notice as you click on these things, you'll get lots of information about the company. So the company, hypothetically, is a U.S. corporation, and we're using standard codes here from ISO, which would allow a machine to draw lots of conclusions about what this company can and can't do, must do, what are formal procedures, etc. And then after lots of information about persons involved, we have lots of information about the transaction itself, okay, like this. Let's show a little bit of what that looks like. So if we render out the term sheet, this is the term sheet for the transaction with the information filled in. And notice as we mouse over that it has the specific, you can see what the label of the information, hence where it came from. Also note that defined terms can be used as actual parameters reducing ambiguity and also allowing you to navigate directly to the definition of the thing. And that's generalized like that. Okay. So that's just a standard HTML trick. It turns out to be very easy to do that in a maintainable way. So there's our term sheet, and we can also look at all the other documents like this. But there's an additional thing that we can do. For instance, if we have the CDA, this is the CDA set up generally. And notice that it's missing the information about the parties because it's set up generally. It knows who the company is, but it doesn't know who the counterparty is, the recipient of information. And notice also that it captures the 3 variations suggested by the National Venture Capital Association with a different set of engagements and exceptions for a VC versus a company versus an individual, human. And what we can do, actually, if we look up here in the browser bar, we see that what I've done is I've rendered the CDA its root, but we can also do it for a particular investor, like that, in which case it actually has the information for the investor. And notice, since this is State Street Corporation, which is in my hypothetical masquerading as a VC, we've got the specific information regarding the their set of obligations tailored for the VC. And that's true. Also, we can change that. So investor 2 is a company thought not to be a VC. And so it's got its set, which has slightly different. Or if you had an individual, so none of these investors is an individual, but we could generate the thing also for a director, like that. So for the director, it's Allison Andrews, and hers is set up for an individual, like that. Other stuff gets fixed too as in the course of the rendering. So we have a highly structured bit of information which allows us to, in a compact way, express a whole venture deal, and to do that in a way that remains machine readable. The machine can know when the closing's supposed to be, or in fact any other fact it can know because it's properly labeled information. Okay. It also allows, as I said, for the forms to be maintained on GitHub like this, and this set of materials would ideally be taken over, this repo would be taken over, the repo of the standards would be taken over, sorry, went too far. This repo of the standards would be taken over by the National Venture Capital Association or any group that wanted to further this idea. So that's the general notion. We think that for the enterprise, this allows an easy way to instantiate a new set of documents for a venture deal by forking the repo and filling in their own information, working through all the issues that they need to work through in however conventional way they would, including with the advice of their lawyers. But they end up with a compact, data-oriented, versioned system that fits with the way that they do coding and many other parts of their performance and fulfillment, which would also be Git-based. For the VC or the TTO, it accelerates standards, and it means that it's very easy to read all of these things. The information is presented right here, right this way. and you can create various scenarios. So here's the financial information. You could have a separate group work on this information without having to bother themselves with all of the other information, which often gets embedded in Word documents and batted back and forth inefficiently. For the lawyer, this requires a little bit of a learning curve, but it actually solves most of the difficult problems of managing document sets, managing differences, merging comments, all of that stuff, because the coders have done that already and far better than the lawyers have or ever will. This also is at the intersection of code and law, that is, of the smart contract ecosystem. That's where this coding originated, was through smart contract collaboration. And at the intersection with AI, that is to say that this is a, quote, model, and AI can crunch models, work with them, find variations, find centers of gravity, etc. But this provides a nice interface for AI to the world of legal text and the world of those who work with legal text, lawyers and others. So that's probably enough said on this. Thank you very much.